gospel radio station that is playing music 24 hours. If you hear music in the background, that's our music playing. Different genre of gospel music that is being played. But today's the third this third week that we're in. We're doing the book of Exodus, and we're going to be going into three chapters. We're going to do chapter 4, verse 28 to 31. We're also going to be doing chapter 5, verse 1 through 8, and chapter 7, verse 1 through 13. Now, we're not going to be reading all these chapters. We are going to be summarizing the story, the chapters. And all this is just a summary, sort of like a Bible sermon for you for your Bible studies. But I would urge you to read each and every chapter that we go over, and to read it for you to get a better understanding of what the stories are saying, and an understanding of this. And within this story, the topics are going to be basically the the sovereignty of God, the pride and the power that He has, and the 10 plagues. So those are the things. Those are the topics that we're going to be touching on. We're going to talk on His sovereignty. We're going to touch on His pride and His power. We're going to touch on the pride and power there is that's within these stories, and the plagues, these 10 plagues that God sends down on Egypt. Now, as we go through, let me get here, go right here. Now, as we look in the book of Moses, or I always say the book of Moses, but in the book of Exodus, uh, we see the story of Moses and Aaron. Now, God has already gave Moses his calling and told him to go forth, and He let him know who he was, who I am, and He's given them the sign. He gave the people the sign. He gave Moses the sign to give to the people, so the people would know that he was sent by God. So now he has Aaron. Him and Aaron are now going to confront the Pharaoh, the powerful ruler of Egypt. God has given Moses the authority to speak on his behalf and demand the release of the Israelite slaves. But as we know, as this goes, Pharaoh's heart was hardened by pride. He don't want these people to go because they're building his city. He has a city that he has to build. They have to build the supply area for it. So Pharaoh's heart is filled with pride and his refusal to let the people go. So Pharaoh does not want these Israelites to leave, because if they leave, there's nobody there to rebuild his city for them. Moses and Aaron warned Pharaoh. So they're warning him. They're like, "Hey, Pharaoh, look, I don't think you want to challenge the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I don't think you want to challenge him." But uh, Pharaoh is very, very, very strict and very, very stern. He has a lot of pride with this. He feels, "I'm going to challenge him anyway, regardless, because who is your God?" And Moses and Aaron warned Pharaoh of the consequences of his disobedience, but he did not listen. So Pharaoh does not want to listen to God, God's demand to let his people go. He did not want to give in to Moses or to Aaron for whatever reason. He's like, "No, we're not. I'm not gonna give in. I'm not going to. I'm going to stand my ground. I got mine." In other words, Egypt had their own God. They felt their gods were more stronger than the God of Isaac and Jacob, and that's how Pharaoh was looking at it. So God sent 10 plagues upon Egypt. He sent 10 plagues upon Egypt, each one more devastating than the last. These plagues were to demonstrate were to the demonstration of God's sovereignty and power over all creation. So God did these 10 plagues to show Pharaoh that he has the authority over all the creation. No matter what, you don't have this authority. I have the authority over all your creation as well. The first plague that was turning the water of the Nile River, into blood. That was the first plague that he sent. This was a direct challenge to the Egyptian gods. Hippi was the first Egyptian god. Hippi, Hippi, Hippi. It was the first god who was believed to be the god of the Nile. Okay, so this god was the god of the Nile, and this river now runs red. But God showed that God shows He alone had power over the water. So God shows that He has power over the waters of the world. As we know back then, and maybe even now, we have there's some people that feel there's many gods and different gods. Some people may feel there's different gods: God for the rain, God for the wind, God for the different gods because of different beliefs. But the God is back then, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was the one true God. As we look at and we read through the Bible, He was the one true God. And Pharaoh is being challenged by this. God is challenging him and letting him know, no, I control everything. I have the authority over all creation. The second plague was the swarm of frogs that covered the land. So now you have swarm of frogs because he keeps refusing. Each time a plague happens, a plague stays for about 7 days, and they come back. Moses and Aaron comes back and lets him know, surely you'll let my people go. And Pharaoh's still hardened, and he's not released. He's not going to release them no matter what. So God sends a second plague, and now He has a plague of frogs that are coming on the ground, and they're landing. You got frogs everywhere. Everywhere you see, there's frogs. This was a humiliation to the Egyptian goddess Hikki, um, who was associated with fertility and childbirth. This god Hikki, Heket, was affiliated with childbirth, fertility, and childbirth. This was the Egyptian god that I believe, they would pray to for when they wanted a child to come into the world. This was the one who grants the fertility of the women to have come forth with childbirth. God was showing that He alone had the power to bring life or death. So God is showing that He has this power of, I have the power over life and death. So your God, there's no power there. You don't have no power. I have the control of this. So we see this, and once again, for about 7 days, Moses and Aaron comes back again, and they ask him again, surely you will let God's people go. Surely we will let the people go. And once again, Pharaoh says, no, I'm not going to let your people, I'm not letting them go. They will still have to build it. He still wants them to build his city. So now, as the plagues continue, Pharaoh's pride only grew. He refused to acknowledge God's authority and continued to resist letting the Israelites go. Okay, he still continued to not let the Israelites go. But each plague was a reminder of God's sovereignty and his ultimate power over all things. So Pharaoh had to deal with all the things that God had in power for him and what he was going to be dealing with God. And he wanted him to let Pharaoh know that I run the show. I have control of everything. And then we see finally after the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn, meaning the firstborn, every firstborn child was going to be was this was going to happen. Pharaoh relented and allowed the Israelites to leave. So now he says, okay, after the 10 plagues and the very last one was the firstborn, and he allowed the Israelites to leave. But it was only after he had experienced the full force of God's judgment that he realized the error of his ways. So it's after these 10 plagues, he realizes now, I can't challenge this God anymore. So I'm going to have to let these people go. He sits back and he decides, okay, I'm going to let these people go. So Moses and Aaron, Moses and Aaron and Pharaoh is powerful. This powerful reminder of the consequences of pride and his in the importance of recognizing God's sovereignty. When we allow our own pride to cloud our judgment. So a lot of times our pride, what we have in pride for ourselves, we will allow that to cover the judgment that we have. It will give us judgment because we tend to be have very a lot of pride, and we don't see things because of our pride blocks that. We risk facing the same fate as Pharaoh. So when you see certain things, you tend to have a less feeling for it or less understanding. So you don't want to give in to it because it's different. So this is what Pharaoh was doing. So let us remember the word of Exodus 31. And the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had had visit visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked on their affliction when they bowed their heads and worshiped. May we always hum, humble ourselves before the Lord and acknowledge his power and authority in our lives. So in this piece, in the part three of it, we're looking at Pharaoh's understanding of everything and the way he's handling what he's going through. He's challenged God to the fullness, and God has shown him what you try to come for. and he's pushing this information. He's pushing God to a very limit, and God is showing him each and every way for everything that you do. I, I have the power. I have the control over everything. And now we're going to look at this power in the sacred name of God, which is also in our part three series. And in this part three series, what we're looking at is in the book of Exodus, we see the power of God's sacred name or full display as he uh, demonstrates his superiority over the false gods of Egypt uh, through the 10 plagues. So through these 10 plagues, God shows his authority over these guys, that these guys have no power over him. They can't stop him from what he wants to do, or they can't help the Egyptians. The name of God is not just a name, is that not just merely a title, but the representative of his authority and sovereignty over all other gods.